Hello and welcome, everyone, um, to the Hack and HR Summer Series. So very excited to be here with a group of panelists, and we're going to introduce them in just about a second. So as people start joining, I'm sure people will start joining us over time here. Uh, Drop in a comment. Tell us where you are in the world, what you're up to, and just say hello, introduce yourself to the other folks. So you'll see that on the right-hand side, some of the comment chats that are going on. So today's topic is HR as a change catalyst, right? So leading org transformation and innovation. I think it's a fascinating topic. There's going to be a lot in there, I'm sure, and we'll hear from a panelist. My name is Ricardo Troiano. I am currently a co-partner and founder of an org development and leadership consultancy called Concio. So before we go any further, let's get right to our other panelists. I'd love to have them join me and introduce themselves. All right, here we are. Great to see you all. So maybe I'll just kind of go in order of I see you in the screen. You can put my glasses on and make sure I get the names just right. Megan, you're first on my screen. Can you say hello to us?
Fabulous. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Bickle. I am joining from cloudy New York
Megan,
City.
you seem to be on mute. Okay, let's try that again. Go ahead, Megan.
Can everyone hear me?
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Bickle. I'm joining from cloudy New York City. I'm an organization development practitioner at heart and very excited for today's conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And okay, Cyprian, you're next on my list, and I hope I pronounced it right.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, and lovely to meet you, Megan, as well. So I'm Cyprian, or short and simple for people is Chip. I am joining you today from London, UK, and in my normal day job, I lead organizational transformations and change for sort of large-scale organizations, anything above 30,000 people.
Thanks, Chip. Very, very relevant data. And thanks for those of you who are joining. I see coming in from Jersey, the US, Kentucky, India, Turkey. We have quite a lot of folks joining us. Hello from Brazil. Excellent to see that. I know. Let's move on to you.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Lovely. Well, I'm coming to you from the San Francisco Bay Area. I mean, we have a lot of activity lately, not always good, sometimes a lot of earthquake activity. So it's sunny out here, but at the same time, summer is over. I do a lot of organizational design and effectiveness through my work. I am lucky enough to have a combination of being a certified senior HR professional and a change management practitioner. So a lot of change in the area. So a lot of wonderful things to share today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss. Thank you, everyone, for making that a wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Anna. Thanks you for joining us, and stay safe. We'll see if you start moving around. What's happening there. But hello also Bangladesh. I see Bermuda. Okay, now we're jealous here. Madrid joining us in the call. Janet, how about you? Would you like to?
Good morning, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Absolutely.
Oh, good, great. Good morning. My name is Janet Rico Urig, and I am coming to you from sunny Arizona, currently in Glendale, but hail out of Tucson, Arizona, and I serve as Pima Community College's Human Resources Director. I'm excited to be with you all this morning.
Great, yeah, thank you. So such great experiences, and let's just dive right into it. So as we talked about, it's about HR and the role in actually leading, right? And I thought that caught my eye, the word leading. So let's open the aperture and start wide, and then we'll dive in. So what roles do you typically see HR taking up when these org transformations come around? And I'll open it to anyone, and then we'll move around as we go.
Ricardo would like us really to jump in and start.
Yes, I think so. Please just
Oh,
jump in and
yeah,
we'll just have a conversation and see where it takes us.
I can spark that off, and everyone really can join me. I believe that HR is in a privileged position to have a very good horizontal view of what is going on within the organization, and that is wonderful because this can really give the opportunity to HR to have a systems thinking. I do believe that it's very much required for HR to have a complete view of what is going on, but understand at the same time how each part is completing the other. Organization by its name means that each part of it really needs the other in order to function well. That's why I believe that the HR at this point needs to utilize this horizontal view that it has in order to develop a systems thinking and help the organization transform. And there are many things that I can talk about that because I do organizational design, but I would like really to give the floor to everyone else to enter their insights on that.
Love that, Anna. And if I'm allowed to build on it, just to go back to the initial question and sort of the different roles that HR could take across organizational transformations, and love system thinking. I think it's part of what we should be using more and more often in a lot of organizations. And I think that element of systems thinking allows HR, depending on the maturity of the organization, the type of transformation that is being taken, to take on multiple different roles. So you can be some of the ambassadors and almost like co-create the vision with the business leaders of what is the business transforming into? What type of organization do we want to become? What does that look like and feel like and smell like and taste like for people internally, for people externally? Then you can take the role of change management. So in a lot of organizations, I see HR almost like managing the change and supporting through all of that as a journey, whether you're doing it to the level of extent where you're doing like personas and you're doing change journeys per persona and you're understanding how people feel across the different stages of the journey, up to you and your level of maturity in organization. You can do talent development. So you're transforming the organization, therefore your skills journey is changing and the skills you need in the organization will be different. You can do culture shaping as part of the direction of the journey as well. You can take a bit of a step back and almost like be an advisor and communicator if that's sort of the level of maturity HR has in the organization. But I think across all of that, the main purpose and how almost like the fundamental element is how do we support the organization, the business leaders and employees through managing that change and taking it through the end transformation.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Chip and Anna. So the systems view, you can kind of see across and playing all these multiple roles now. Megan and Jen, I'd love to invite you now into the as we shift. So, okay, they can play a lot of roles. They see across the organization. They can help support and enable, I think, two of the words I heard. But we're talking about leading, right? Should HR be leading, and are they poised to actually lead on some of these transformational shifts? How do you see that?
I think definitely. I think HR can lead organizational transformation by first aligning the HR strategies with overall business goals. I think this involves really understanding, making sure that the strategic objectives of the organization are embedded and ensured in the HR practice. And so recruitment, development, retention, training, all of those benefits, all of those are really geared towards achieving the business goals. And so a lot of times HR facilitating open communication channels, providing regular updates on change and soliciting feedback can help build trust in the organization and really ensure that everyone's on the same page.
Nice.
Yeah, just to build upon that, I think the role that HR plays, like we spend all day thinking about the people, our talent, retention, engagement, leadership. And that is so important in an organizational transformation because it's not just what does the structure need to look like? What are the roles? It's really, and I think Cyprian highlighted all of the pieces, but then also being that steward of culture and having a pulse on the level of change fatigue that might be existing in terms of how do we do this thoughtfully to ensure this disruption is as minor as possible. So ultimately, we're still able to deliver to our stakeholders in a meaningful manner while right-sizing the organization or realigning the people.
Yeah, nice. I love those inputs. So let's turn up the heat a little bit, right? So I'm thinking, we're talking about transformation, right? Which it means at the end of it, it looks very different than they did at the beginning. And all the things you said, HR is really, curating, thinking about people all day, talking about the culture, maintaining that the organizational traditions and heritage. But now they're asked to really potentially disrupt established norms, right? So how does HR balance this need for maintaining org stability with really bringing in potentially disruptive change? What's your view on that? Again, let's open it up. Whoever wants to join in first, jump in.
I feel like having to define what do we mean by org stability, because in some of the circumstances where you're driving transformation, that's the least thing that you want. Is you want almost like galvanized change across the organization. I think there's the elements where as you're going through transformation, you would want to retain, sometimes for a period of time, sometimes for end state as well. But I think it's being very selective and very targeted of what are the type of things that are useful, that are sustained, that amplify, so almost like the enablers of your transformation, or things that will connect into the future. I think Megan touched earlier quite nicely on sort of change fatigue, and sometimes we're seeing change fatigues into the part of the business that we want to retain or not to disrupt as much. And sometimes it's just the way we're communicating and we're getting people on board with the transformation that could convert almost like that resistance from the business that causes change fatigue into actually ambassadorship and galvanized energy and fuel for the transformation.
I think one way to ensure that you're fighting against fatigue or those folks who are maybe roadblocks to change is, I think HR has the responsibility to encourage creative thinking and problem solving by helping leadership, because it's not in isolation, creating an environment where employees feel safe to express ideas of innovation and change. And so I think obviously some brainstorming sessions can help with that. A lot of policies that could support innovation, really flexible work arrangements, any idea sharing platforms can really help foster a culture of innovation. And I think the policy piece can help encourage employees feel safe and think outside of the box to collaborate across departments or across the organization.
Yeah, nice. And Anna, I saw you wanted to jump in there.
Yes. Whatever we do, and there are wonderful things that we can do. I mean, as a change management practitioner, I can tell you that all these things mentioned really do help, and they're very much important. Why? We need to think about the why. Before we start doing anything, we really need to start with what we try to create. And as you've said, really, employees want to feel stability, want to feel that what is the word stability really for them? They want really to feel that they can trust. They can trust the organization. They can entrust their lives to this organization. And when they do that when they feel that there is honesty, transparency, purpose. So if the organization has these three elements, it really helps the people not to feel change fatigue and really buy into the change. Because as Cyprian really said, the environment is constantly changing. We need that agility within organizations in order the organizations really to move with these exponential changes that are happening. How are you going to achieve it? Can you really create stability? No, but you can create really the trust, the honesty, and the transparency. And most important, the real purpose that people can really engage to. And we really need to have these things in mind in whatever we build, in whatever we do. And then everything will work well.
Yeah, thank you. I love that, Megan. I think you were gonna.
Yeah. So just two things. Like one, underscoring the importance of clear and transparent communication. I think we've all had situations where it felt like the change just happened and we're like, wait, what's going on? Versus updates and just being inundated and knowing it's coming, and the clarity around here's what you're giving up in order to do this new thing. Like something as simple as in a former organization, we moved we moved away from Google Drive to SharePoint. And so just going through like the practices around what are we letting go of in the old to embrace the new? What's the work? When's the go live? Like what's the messiness? So then it felt there was a minimal level of disruption. The other thing around like change, and I love how Anna like broke it down in terms of what do employees need to feel in order to navigate change. I heard years ago, I heard on a podcast, somebody said, we used to think of change like surfing. And also I'm not a surfer, so I apologize for this terrible analogy. But get up on that surfboard, crest the waves, ride into the beach, like very calm, right? But now we almost need to treat change like whitewater rafting, and we are taking it one giant curve at a time, right? Like we're in this boat, we're pedal, we made it through the corner, and now we've got like 30 seconds to gear up and ready ourselves for the next one.
Nice. And I not a surfer as well, but I do love the analogy. And so very interesting. You're saying, we got to get good at letting go. And as Chip reminded us before, and also stability, what actually stays, right, is equally important. Now, I'm curious about, I think, Megan, you had mentioned earlier that the alignment, I think, of the transformative or transformation initiative along with the business strategy, right? And someone in the comment section had said, talked about HR, that seat at the table, right? So very often the HR role is some of the things you talked about, communicating with your group, building trust, aligning. But if it really comes to really driving strategy, and then wondering that does HR have a relevant seat at the table in order to align transformation and strategy? What would that look like?
A utopia. That's the ideal, right? That's the ideal on paper case study of HR has a seat at the table and is involved from the get-go. Is that always the case? Absolutely not, right? Like sometimes a function within the business is like, oh, we need to do this reorg, we're going to restructure. Oh, wait, maybe we should bring in HR, right? And so at least in my experience, HR is often like having to help play catch up versus immediate involvement from the beginning. But I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel.
I think my first answer that I was given was talking about almost like maturity levels. And I think it's sometimes we're thinking about best in class HR ways of working and how HR is part of the board and the executive team, and how succession planning for the CEO includes the CHRO and all of these wonderful different stories. But that's not the reality. So reality in organizations is you have people that are struggling to keep some of the lights on and sometimes fail with some of the minimum legal requirements, and you have all the way through proposition comparison with global markets and everything else. And I think it's useful for us to recognize that, because not all of us work in like FTSE organizations that have a lot of budgets to run a lot of these things, or actually with leaders that understand the true value that HR can bring into some of these conversations. So my take is sometimes you have to take the chair rather than wait for stakeholders to give it to you. Sometimes you have to fold in and say, this is what you're giving me to do. If you're giving me more remit, this is what I could do for you versus what you allow me to intervene into. So if you're asking me from an HR perspective, just to do comms for the transformation, yes, but I could do talent profiles and the migration of talent. I could talk to people about training, upskilling, and how we get ready for the new organization that we're coming through. I can do the storytelling of everything else of the organization that we are trying to become. I could be an advisor on all of those other areas. So I think it's a bit of how do we bring some of the sales skills in HR to take on some of that chair responsibility rather than wait for stakeholders to offer it to us. There's a lot of stories out there where actually if you're just waiting for someone to give you the chair, that's never going to happen. And in more scenarios, there's shrinking of the chair rather than more of the chair.
Yeah, I love that. I know maybe Janet, get you in here, and then Anna, I know you have a comment as well. So Janet.
Yeah, I think that a really important piece, even if you're standing behind the seat of chairs at the table, right? The opportunity to ensure that an HR professional has to be able to convey the messages clearly and build those strong relationships with employees at all levels. And so making sure that you're knowledgeable about change management, about the implementation and theory of that, and that you are showing up and making sure that you're being seen for the work, even if you're thinking you're not. The opportunity to see big picture, develops your HR strategies that align with the organizational goals. If you learn to speak with that business mindset, finance language, all of those things that will surprise your peers or colleagues to say, oh, wait, Janet knows about what we're in terms of the implementation of practice that we're doing. Really pursuing those opportunities in change management that can help you stay up to date with the latest trends and best practice of the business, in addition to the work you do as HR, because then you're able to build that network of support on your team, maybe even the opportunity to provide your insight and guidance. And a lot of that just takes time and practice and effort. I love what Supriya, pull that chair up to the table, if you will.
Yeah, nice. Love that. Anna.
Well, let me say that I've seen all kinds of things. I'm lucky enough to be in the Silicon Valley, that we have the largest corporations on earth. But at the same time, we have also small startup companies or companies that they are at their scaling up phase. So I had the opportunity as an external consultant to see all kinds of situations for HR. I would like to give something practical on that subject. It's very important, yes, to give them the opportunity to understand what you can offer. And it's very important also to make sure that you are proactive. I like these ideas very, very much. But I would like to offer the practical advice of develop partnerships within the organization. Develop partnerships. And who is one role that you should be a very good partner with? If you really take into consideration that technology is the highest leveraging factor right now for the organizational transformation, okay, then you need to partner with the Chief Technology Officer. Really go there and show the Chief Technology Officer or whoever, whatever the role is called, what you can do in order to help the organization align with all the technology changes. I was in a huge AI conference that we had here in the Silicon Valley, and all the Chief Technology Officers were telling me, they ask for me things that I can't do if we don't change things within the organization. Bingo. That's what you need to do.
I love that. And I think even those of us outside of Silicon Valley would agree around the technology piece. I've heard a quote the other day that the future is either high touch or high tech, and that's the only two roads. And I think we got to straddle both at HR, right? So potentially a good good place to be. Now, you talked about some of these. First of all, I love the practical advice, and I think that's important as we have a lot of colleagues from all different parts of HR. A lot of them early in career and are thinking this. And both, Chip and Janet, you also mentioned skills, right? Bring these skills to the table that HR has. So, I'd love to open it up to a little practical advice for our colleagues, maybe earlier in career who are listening, or who haven't had a lot of deep experience in transformation and change or innovation. How can HR professionals kind of get those necessary skills, mindsets? How do they actively work towards becoming effective change agents in the organizations they serve? I know you're all quietly thinking, ready to dive in. Yeah,
I,
jump
I
jump
can
right
go
in.
first. I'm sure that, I say things that sometimes really instigate arguments and insights.
Love
So I do believe that the knowledge is out there. There is so much knowledge out there. You can just really go out there in the internet, in AI. You can find all the knowledge that you need. No need really for that. The need, though, is on how to implement that knowledge. And that's something that you really need to grasp a better aptitude on how to. And that means that you really need to develop methodological approach. You really need to have, I said, systems thinking. You really need to have to know how to handle the politics. You really need to know how to develop partnerships, how to build relationships. This is the kind of skills that someone needs. The knowledge per se exists and easy to get it.
I love that perspective. I think we're big consumers of a lot of stuff out there, but to then take it and practically apply it to drive effectiveness is it's a very different ballgame, isn't it? Janet.
One of the things that I, as a lifelong learner, try to do is continuous learning. So whether that's from other people in your industry or HR conferences, that's where I am actually this week, professional associations, I think like Anna getting additional certifications beyond human resources. I love that she's a change management professional. I think that is important because it's important to stay up with the latest trends and best practices. And sometimes we can get mired in our own day-to-day and learning from those within our organization, like in the great partnerships Anna mentioned, but the opportunity to learn outside of your organization can be really important. Subscribing to relevant journals, making sure that you're following folks on LinkedIn or Hacking HR. I know that there's a lot of opportunities for learning across the human resources profession. And so that I think is very exciting, really allows you to network. Mentorship can really play a role in the development in terms of practical ideas. And so thinking about new ideas, research, and having those conversations with your peers, I think can be really helpful in terms of building your toolbox in terms of ensuring that you're able to maintain consistent change catalyst.
Yeah, nice, Megan.
One suggestion that I would add is, attend retrospectives. So ask your business leaders, ask your peers in HR, like attend as many retrospectives as you can to then identify what are the 3 things that commonly come up and how can you get really good at those things. So then when you're partnering with your leaders on transformations or change management initiatives, you have in your back pocket this historical knowledge of, hey, over the last 6 months, these are the top 3 things that teams said they would have done differently or they wish that they had known ahead of time. Let's build that into our plan. And so taking advantage of retrospectives as a way of, learning from others to then bring forth to your teams, with a little of that advanced foresight.
Yeah, so Megan, let me ask you this for maybe some colleagues who might be joining who who aren't seeped in agile ways of working, or what is a retrospective?
So a retrospective is a nicer way of saying postmortem to use some very technical organization development language. And really, in essence, it's let's say following this conversation, the 5 of us hop on a call and we simply go through like what went well for the conversation, or what would we do differently? What things were amiss and a really great learning? Like just keeping it really simple. And we could identify, was it technology? Were there processes? Was it lack of communication? And so I love retrospectives, and I feel like you don't need to overcomplicate it. It's just simply like, let's bring together, people that were involved or stakeholders and kind of look at it through, now that the thing is done, what did we learn? What would we do differently? But also celebrating, like, here's the things that went well. But I think the more important thing is ensuring that, as you're on teams that are doing retrospectives, like take those key learnings forward versus cool, we did our retrospective and we talked about what went well and what we would have done different, but then we didn't apply what would we do differently to the next project.
Yeah, thank you. Love that. We talk a lot about learning organizations, right? How do you continue to learn? It was a lifelong learner comment from Janet, but we forget about organizational learning, right? What are the things we've done in the past that we should pull forward into the future? You can learn more from your previous mistakes than from your potential future successes, right? So I love that. So I'm stitching a few things together here. We talked a lot about trust. Chris had asked, before talking about some of these, in-person skills, how do you practice them before going out and reaching to stakeholders? And it conjures up this thought of, back in the title, it's transformation and innovation, right? How do you encourage that experimentation and risk taking to really drive innovation within the business?
I think a few elements that you can do in organizations to just facilitate that. And a lot of it comes from trust. So trust that mistakes are being converted into lessons learned. And the moment that mistakes are not felt like being punished and they are lessons learned, everything becomes a prototype and a lesson and an inspiration and a joy. So we, in previous organizations that I worked on, we've created almost this dedicated space where we've been calling it almost like a playground where nothing could go wrong. So we would have come up with, what is it that we would want to create differently? Do we want to change drastically the onboarding experience? What would that look like if we had no restrictions on money, budget, technology, and we had enough information from behavior science? So we would have just crafted something. We would have said, let's test this on 12 innocent people that are willing participants into this, with no expectation that will go right. So the wronger it would have gotten, the best learning for us to understand the feedback that we're capturing from people. So you're creating this environment where you're constantly prototyping and you're creating almost like you're putting on the science hat and you'll be going into the lab and you're testing and prototyping different ideas. The moment that you're starting to create almost like ambassadorship and permission for the organization to do that, you see a lot of ideas flourishing. Some of them do sound like out of this world. Some of them are like no-brainers, but you're creating this permission for the organization to constantly feed you new ideas of what is it that we should be innovating? What should we think about differently? How do we break down some of the, I'm going to say a bad word on this recording, bullshit rules that we operate in organizations today, or rules, if we want to call them, shorten that. And just allows you to like think differently about organizations and get participations from the whole organization.
Very nice. I think HR is poised to, that's how we started the discussion, right? Kind of looking across systemically at this piece. Great. So just a quick one for those of you who are who are watching along and throwing in comments. Thank you. I'd love to see where you're all coming from. As you think of questions, please feel free to throw them in, and if I get a chance, I'll absolutely touch on them. Janet, I think you had a comment here.
One of the things, and I love what Cyprian said, I think one of the things that how you can do that is to use your data, right? Use some analytics to help you make strong and drive your decision making, and other departments or the CEO, the CFO, they will look to you to have those metrics to really think about, well, how am I measuring the employee experience, continuous learning, using those agile methodologies, right, to adapt to the rapid change in the environment. I think the opportunity to personalize development can also be helpful, and really drive how and use the not just technology, but the data to help make that significant impact. If you're not measuring, right, you inspect what you expect. And so if you're not measuring your data to predict trends and developments in your organization, it will be harder to address those potential issues, and innovation can stall.
Yeah, nice.
Just to add on to that, I think it's like, think of it twofold: of what's within my control, of how can I create this culture of continuous learning or risk taking or innovation on my team, and then how can I be a steward for the organization. And I think sometimes in HR we get really caught up in the organization view and forget about, well, wait a second, like, I'm a leader. I can, have a conversation with my team around, like, let's create our little HR playground. And this is the space where we're going to, like, test out wild and crazy ideas with teams that might be interested, garner some feedback, to then think about how could we do this at scale. But also, just to underscore the importance of psychological safety, and within your organization, where is that line of any mistake is something that can be learned from versus these are the mistakes that you can't come back from, right? Like, and I think that ties to, organizational culture, even just the industry or the products that you're doing, right? Like in certain areas of healthcare, like, yep, you might not be able to make mistakes when the end result is, it could kill somebody. But for the most part, like, again, like being really clear with your team and just having that as a conversation of, like, sure, like, go try this, have fun, learn something, make mistakes, we can come back from it, versus these are the areas that maybe we shouldn't be experimenting with, and here's why.
Nice. I love that. I love that balance. And I'm wondering, Anna, if you could share some views here.
Yes, I mean, let me share. I mean, I really want to combine all these things that have been already mentioned, but emphasize very much the two things that influence the culture. And these are how the organization is built, and second, how it's being managed. And on the first one, how the organization is being built, you can't have really innovation if there are complicated processes, lack of empowerment within the roles, and allow me to say a little bit of cloudy requirements for its role. With that being said, that part, if you don't really simplify things, make things a little bit less bothersome for the people, they will not have neither the time nor the appetite to get involved into anything else. So people really need to feel that they have the opportunity to show something, and they have really the opportunity to do something. And with that being said, I will also go to the second part that I've said, and that is how we manage and lead the organization. Because even if you create the conditions by having a good clarity within the job roles, and you really create less complicated processes, if the managers or the leaders really discourage people, then you're going to diminish the good work that you've done with the build. Exactly in the channel that I've said before of being methodological, I would like to say that for our audience, we need to always think these two things: build and manage. How we're built, how we're managed. So explore these two channels and see what you can do on these two channels. And then you can really create the conditions for innovation.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the thought of, creating the conditions for any of these things to foster, in this case, innovation. I've noticed there's a lot of comments coming in from folks in HR, some not in HR, who are saying, who are exploring conversations like ours to say, well, what is it that these people do, and are they leading transformation, right? So I'm wondering, for whether you're an HR professional or not, folks who are thinking about, stepping into more change catalyzing roles in organizations, how does one go about becoming an effective change catalyst? If you're perhaps, lower down in an organization, you don't necessarily hold a traditional leadership role, and you're not quite sure. Back to, I'm thinking about Megan's point of, well, some things you tinker and fail with, no issues. Some you got to be a little more careful, right? So how does one get into this space of becoming and improving their capability as a change catalyst?
One suggestion I would have is like user as self. So for yourself, put yourself in situations where it's uncomfortable and you're having to navigate the like letting go of old norms and embracing something new. Like an easy way, traveling to a new country that you've never been to, and just kind of navigating the language, the food, the culture, which side of the sidewalk you walk on, like how you greet people. And so I think that's an easy way, to kind of put yourself in in a scenario that kind of forces you to have some of that self-reflection of like, what was uncomfortable for me? Like, how did I show up? Did I feel like I fit in? Like, I moved from the Midwest to San Francisco for grad school. And that was my first personal change management experience, where moving to San Francisco, I had to let go of all of the old norms and ways of working that served me well in the Midwest. And something as simple as in the Midwest, I never needed a dinner reservation. I could just show up at a restaurant when I wanted to eat and was seated. I learned very quickly in San Francisco, don't leave home without a dinner reservation unless I didn't care what time I was eating at. And so you just look for those things within your personal life to experience change and discomfort and how you create new norms. Because the more that you can experience it yourself and recognize the emotional aspect will make you a better leader and steward of helping a team, helping a function, helping the organization navigate change, and ensuring that you have that empathy for the emotional aspect of change.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, with all the change happening across organizations, you're always in some level of change, right? But how many people kind of tune into that that experience and actually reflect on how they show up on it and how they can potentially move it? So you have the tools all around you. It's a matter of leaning into it. I love that perspective, Megan. Thank you for that. And I think, Chip, you wanted to jump in, and then Janet.
I'm not sure how I can follow that, because I think Megan gave some really cool personal story advice as well. I was thinking more on the professional side, because we've covered earlier in the conversation almost like the skills we've touched on. I wouldn't necessarily say we've gone into the detail of it, almost like the skills and the type of things that you should be learning. We've talked about how or how you'd approach some of those, from courses to mentoring to spending time with leaders and anything else. I think what we were missing is almost like the journey that people take to get in here. So I've seen people come into the world of transformation and change, whether through project management. So they started doing coordinating projects, moved into project management roles, and then jumped into bigger transformation and change management. I've seen it come from behavior science. So you would have seen almost like organizational psychologists coming in and looking at what does the workplace feel like, and what are the type of elements that were creating either connection to the organization or distance from the organization from individuals, and that moved into change management and transformation. You see people coming from tech, because a lot of organizations that we've been working for have undertaken this expedited journey on digital transformation, and with AI coming fast and aggressively at us, we're going to see more and more of that. So like, I think like the journeys could be multiple of how you get into that space. My advice is make it clear to yourself of what is it that you want as part of your role. Research some of the roles in working in transformation and change. Understand exactly what some of those days would look like, and be very, very targeted with the type of interventions that you're throwing yourself at, to make sure that you're building all of that portfolio of skills, capability, experiences as well. So quite early on in my career, I've decided that I want to try consulting. I went out of the workplace and being in-house, going into consulting, throw myself into that, because that was part of a gap of how do I understand problem solving, and I'm able to sell something to business leaders as part of my journey going into transformation. As I got to a specific level and started talking to ExCo members about business plans and EBITDAs and everything else, I was like, cool, I need a business degree. I'm going to go back into an executive MBA in my spare time to make sure that I'm equipping myself with the same type of language, and I understand some of the complex challenges that these people talk about, that sometimes get paid 10 times my amount. But how do I relate to some of the challenges that they are talking, so I can translate them into a transformation journey for the organization? So I think depending on where you are in your journey, you're going to have different elements and limited time and attention. So use that very carefully and very targeted against what's going to bring the most value to you.
Wow, thank you, Chip. So much in there, right? And even as you're calling out some of these roles, IO Psych or development, tech, project management, there's also a lot of skills in there that any HR colleague would and needs to increasingly pull into their experience and into their resume, right? So some really good stuff there, Janet.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I think to build on would be to, if you're not going outside for outside learning, some of those things can happen in your organization. Asking for stretch assignments, volunteering for those committees, or the implementation committees, right? The opportunity, I would say, and the advice I would give is stay curious, be open to learning even outside of your own path, and build those relationships, as Anna said, across the organization, and seek out mentors, which is what I said a little bit before. But really focusing to develop your skill in communication, I think emotional intelligence and strategic thinking. Those are the things that in change management innovation will help, of course, along with embracing technology and using your data analytics to, right? It is continuous improvement in terms of enhancing your effectiveness.
Nice. I love that. So let's swing now a little bit back around. So, we kind of delved into, HR and building capabilities and skills, becoming better stewards of our own kind of career and learning paths, and building some of these capabilities that we need. But let's swing back to the leading transformation and change. There's a lot of questions that came in. I see a couple from Larissa around the why, and one that struck me is around understanding when the organization needs change, right? So it's often that the change is driven through some other part of the business, and HR plays a role in supporting that change, right? But what about when HR is actually driving the change and leading the change, because they're the ones that are recognizing that a change needs to be had, right? What does that look like when does HR really shift into this, we need to be the catalyst driving the major change in this organization at this particular moment? What do you think that looks like, and where does that come up? Everyone's digging into their book of experiences, thinking back over their careers.
One of the things that, whether it's a major system upgrade or facing resistance due to layoffs, I think was in the chat as well. I think in HR, we really have to step back and look at it from how often and early are we involving employees, not just leaders, in the process? Because I think one of the things Megan said that really, I think, rings true throughout change, managing change, is providing clear information, right? If it is a layoff situation, the opportunity to ensure that you have some transition services for folks, that you're talking clear information about how, the benefits extend post layoff. If there's additional training or upskilling to be had, making sure that the communication is clear, you're able to implement supporting the team and really address the concerns of the environment so that HR can drive and create the assistance that the organization needs.
I think the other thing to add, sorry, Anna, I'll go really quick. The other thing to add,
take your time. We'll
change isn't always bad. Like, it could be like we're moving from Oracle to Workday because we believe that Workday will reduce administrative work, therefore allowing XYZ, right? So I think sometimes there's a perception that change is bad. And so I think that also goes to the clarity around the why. Like, why are we moving from Oracle? Like, oh, Oracle no longer serves us for our organization today or our organization of the future, therefore, blah, blah, blah. And so just having that clear narrative around the why, but also, how we talk about the change, the employees will hear that. So if it shows up in the tone or narrative around a bad thing, then that's going to layer into the fatigue or just exhaustion in the organization.
Yeah, nice, Megan. Anna.
It's very much close to that. Yet I would like to emphasize very much something that has already been mentioned in the comments. If we don't make sure that everyone understands the reasons behind the change, and these reasons are legitimate enough so that people trust the change, then the change is not going to be accepted. People are not going to adopt easily the change. So we really need to make sure that we have not just the communication in place, because what I've seen in my experience is people really a lot of times get confused with what communication is. Communication is not just the big communication architecture that we create for every organization, but it's also the leadership that implements that communication. Because the communication architecture, the wonderful things that we devise for communication can never really replace the leadership role. And a lot of times leaders avoid that, which is not a good thing. So our role as an HR, in order to have a retrospective approach into that, is first of all, make sure that the why is very clear. Second, that why is very much something that would convey a legitimate and honest intention. And last but not least, make sure that the leaders really do the communication part.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Anna. Now, Chip.
And I just wanted to add to that, because there's a lot of things where in certain circumstances we're thinking about change as being almost like a one-off and like a small initiative, sometimes as big as Megan described. I don't think anyone should underestimate moving from an HCM to a different HCM, causing people years and years of struggle and pain and sleepless nights. But sometimes we're thinking about change in isolation rather than change as a constant or change as an ongoing journey for the organization. And the way we're starting to mature our thinking is almost like, how do we differentiate change or change management from transformation? Transformation is, how does the organization become completely different? What are the type of elements that we're involving in there? It's not just changing a system or it's changing a process or anything else. And then the element of change management, where we're looking at the journey that the organization, individuals, behaviors, ways of working is moving from what it is today into what it's going to be tomorrow, and then end state as part of that journey. So I think that if we shift our mindset into thinking that change is constant, then the way we're approaching change becomes more of an ongoing conversation and support and a journey, rather than we've launched the communication of the business just to explain the why of today. That's not going to justify the why of tomorrow or the why of the next week.
Yeah, nice. You brought up some interesting things there, Chip, and I'm wondering what the view here is on measuring outcomes, right? So in the past, very discrete change, right, and maybe not transformative. We had a vision, we had a clarity, and when we'd finish this project, Megan brought up some examples, right? ERP type implementations. But what happens when the change is constant, right? And then the expectation is that it's only going to accelerate and it's emergent, right? We don't exactly know what it'll look like in a year or two. How do you go about, measuring whether or not you're actually, if not being successful, then at least moving in the right direction? Any views on that or experiences that you've seen out there?
I would like to start, by saying, first of all, that change is the sign of life. So there is no change, there is no life. And one thing that we really need to embrace, all of us, most, of the HR professionals, but also all of us, is expecting things to change. If things do not change, they're dead. With that being said, if you really want to measure how things are evolving within a change, within an intentional change that has been set up, you really need to have put in place what you're trying to do. If you have put in place what you're trying to do, then you can really develop the measures to see if you are evolving on that. A lot of times, change happens a little bit by itself, a little bit not very well designed, not intentional. And we try then afterwards to measure things. This will not help, but still, if you really know what you're really striving to do over there, put it down and make sure that you develop the measures of what you're trying to do. And this is how you're going to measure if it is progressing and if it's going towards the right direction.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And look, we are on time. There's only about a minute or two left. So what I would like is just for to hear from each of you, just in closing, right? When you thought about HR's change catalyst, leading org transformation and innovation change, what's perhaps something that was left unsaid or you'd like to leave with the audience as we check out here? So by way of checkout, whoever feels like going first, any last words for our colleagues here listening in? Megan.
I'll go first. I know that we've all said it in many ways, but just to tie a bow around it, the importance of communication. Over communicate. There's a stat that people need to hear things like 7 times, or it needs to be said 7 times before the audience actually hears it. So even if you feel like you're saying the same thing every single day, it doesn't mean that your audience has heard it every single day. And communication, you get to own the narrative. So communicate, communicate, communicate.
Very nice. Thank you. Chip.
Love that. And I think part of, I don't want to reduce transformation just to communication, but I think it is crucial to what Megan said. And sometimes selling that vision, like you do not have to have all of the wheels and cogs and everything else sorted out, is the visual and that sales message that will actually amplify and support your transformation across the organization. So what we're using across my organization today is like, we're describing what type of organization we want to become. How do we want to treat our people? How do we want people to come to work and the joy that they will find in the type of work that they come into, how they will work with their colleagues. We haven't sorted out what technology is going to work and all of those things. Is that the vision that empowers people to actually make it work and drive that innovation forward?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Jeff. Anna, Janet, any last words? Go ahead, Janet.
Sure. In terms, I think the really last 2 important pieces for me are ensuring psychological safety through transparency. So making sure you're building trust with your all of your employees, reduce that uncertainty that change can create for folks, right? We can do that by providing regular updates, being honest about the challenges of the change, and clearly communicating those reasons and benefits behind the change. Having open forums, question and answer sessions, and accessible information channels can really help organizations maintain transparency through change. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you, Janet and Anna.
3 words: involve, partner, and reflect. Involve the people, reflect on what is going on, and partner so that you really have the relationship needed in order to move things ahead. So 3 words. We need to remember these 3 words.
Pragmatic advice. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who joined us. For more information, you can go to Hacking HR and see what the upcoming webinars are. So with that, Chip, Megan, Janet, Anna, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and I wish you the rest of your week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all, and thank you for the audience. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.